Howdy, folks. You're back with another episode of Follow the Leader with your host, Lee Larson. I am here with Malynda Hale. Welcome, Malynda.
Hi, Lee. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Folks, Malynda Hale is an American actress, singer, and activist. She is currently serving as the executive director for the New Evangelicals after having started the creator of the Black Voices Heard Project. She has been featured in the Los Angeles Times, Good Morning America, Huffington Post. You've been in music videos for your activism. I highly encourage folks to check out your music videos. Wow, you one of the things that stood out to me from your website, was how engaged with activism you are, that it's not something you do, it's something that you are. Tell us how does that form you? How do you describe yourself, and what was your journey, to becoming and being in the activist role that you are?
Or, it's interesting. Like you said, it's just who you are. It's always been a part of my life. I feel like I've always been that person that would even like stand up for kids on the playground if they were being bullied. Like that was just who I was. And I think a lot of it does tie back to just my faith and how my parents raised me. My mom is an educator. My dad, he worked at UCSB. He was like the head of facilities management. And so they always had just a different approach on how they dealt with people. And I
Yeah.
picked that up just like from a place of empathy, compassion, serving people, helping people. And so that was just kind of how my sister and I were really raised to really just always be of service.
And excuse me real quick, where is this?
And so I grew up in Santa
Santa
Barbara,
Barbara. Okay.
California. Yeah. So which is it is a very predominantly white town. And so getting more involved in activism, it was an interesting journey. And even when I left Santa Barbara and I went to college, I went to a Christian college, which we'll have that conversation.
Yes.
But my parents really, and specifically my mom, they just really put some good values in me and my sister, and I'm really just indebted to them. And so as I got older, really activism as like a professional, a vocation, I should say, kind of just fell in my lap because it really just started as talking on social media and sharing my perspectives on things that happened and using the music that I wrote and created and performed to talk about social justice issues and then just being more vocal. And so now I'm involved with a lot of different organizations. I do a lot of volunteer and service work, and it's really just a part of who I am. But I really go back to just the root of my faith was really I've always been a very progressive liberal Christian and been so aligned with everything that Jesus taught and stood for. And that's just how I've always wanted to move through the world.
That's beautiful, and it really does show how much family, community, shapes us, not just, our specific beliefs, but our activities. If your family, if your parents are taking you out in the volunteer world, you're gonna see yourself as connected to other people, and, it's just critical that at young ages, we encourage our kids to know that there's more out there, to see things, um, and that, everybody is worthy of dignity and love.
Yes,
So thank you.
absolutely.
Tell us, so, you talk about Jesus and Christianity in your path with activism and progressive Christianity. Was there, and then you talked about going to Christian college. What was your faith journey? Like you said, this college, I mean, you have a very, solid childhood. Here's
Yeah.
college. What happened?
So when I got to college, so I want to be clear. So I grew up in what's called an AME church. If people don't know what that is, it's African Methodist Episcopal, and it's very rooted in Black liberation theology.
Mm,
So very justice driven, very social justice driven, very love, compassion driven. That was what I always grew up with and knew. I had no real exposure to evangelical conservative way of life. So I'm someone who never had to deconstruct or like
mhm.
and reconstruct or go through that journey because I always was raised by a faith that set me on this path of inclusion and love and justice, right? So when I got to Azusa Pacific University, I went there first and foremost because I wanted to go to a Christian college, a huge part of my life, but also they had a really great music program. And up until that point, I'd pretty much been running on natural talent, but I wanted to be trained because I knew that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so I auditioned for their music program and their theater program. I got in, and so I majored in music and minored in theater. But that was my first exposure to, like, conservative Christian evangelicalism mindset and fundamentalism, because I was like, "This isn't what I the type of Christianity that I grew up with." I mean, I was never taught to tell the LGBTQ community that they're going to hell. I was never taught that, women aren't allowed to have a place in terms of leadership in churches. My parents were very liberal, and I was just very, very surprised when I got there to see how closed-minded people were, how they approach certain things, even about race. Like, I had a lot of uncomfortable situations because people didn't go outside of their bubbles, didn't really know people that looked like me, even though they, act like they were cool, but they would say things that, looking back, were definitely deep microaggressions and very racist. But I always say this, every podcast I go on and I talk about this. I say that I went into that school liberal and I came out super, super liberal because I knew exactly what I didn't want to be. And I want to say that I do owe a lot of my music success and the health of my voice to that music program.
Mm,
And I also honestly owe my theology to it as well, because I learned everything not to be, as odd as that sounds. Um, and it really helped affirm that I was on the right track with my faith, and
mm,
that I wanted to be the type of Christian that was the good example, that was showing up for others, that was loving people, and that would also make people ask, "Well, what is it that you believe in? Like, why are you always advocating for people?" And I'm like, "It's my faith,
yeah.
and not in a way to convert them, but to just say, "Hey, this is what works for me, and this is
Mm,
what keeps me grounded. If you wanna know about it, happy to tell you, but I'm not gonna force it on you." So,
right?
it was quite an experience, going to that college and learning not only a lot about myself, but a lot about how other people view the world.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I really liked what you said about how it helped you theologically. It helped shape you. Like it affirmed that you had values that were not simply moralistic or religious, but they were communal. Like, okay, there are values here that can cross cultures, and um, Christianity does not have the monopoly on helping and loving people, but it does
Right.
help us give us a framework to work in.
Yeah.
Um, you talk about your work in California. I noticed on your music, I brought up earlier the music videos. You have one called "Story" that is deeply moving. It is a music video of you singing, with the topic matter being the unhoused population in LA. You also have "Stand," which beautifully done. This music video, folks, it's Melinda singing her beautiful voices, but she's the music video is about standing up for yourself, standing together, and has a lot of imagery of young women of different appearances, of different abilities, engaging and standing up in life, and
Yeah.
being together. So, talk to me about is there a specific, you could call yourself an activist. Are there specific things that, like you've done homelessness and you've worked with women. Are there certain matters that you keep coming back to?
I
Um,
mean I mean, I think in general, race will always be something because, I'm a Black woman in America, and that's something that has defined a lot of my experiences. There's another song that I have called "We Run" that I specifically wrote, about the Black Lives Matter movement, just from the perspective of watching all of this happening and trying to explain to people how we as Black Americans feel. I feel like it's actually due for a re-release because of everything that's going on. But yeah, I think in general, I tend to go back to that because that's what my lived experience is. But I don't think that that means that I can't advocate for other things or talk about them just because they're not my experience. I have a deep heart for the unhoused community. I've done
mm,
a lot of volunteering with the church specifically with the church that I used to attend out here, but just in other aspects, I work with OBKLA, which they provide meals, fresh, hot meals, really great
Mm,
food for people that are suffering from food insecurity or the homeless community. And, you don't have to have know that experience to know that it's something that impacts a lot of people, and you can just find little ways to give back. And so, of course, women empowerment, any way I can do that because that's also part of my identity. But I think in general, going back to my racial identity is something that I always go back to because it's the one thing that people who aren't this race can't understand, but I want to try to
mhm.
guide them in a certain way. We can powwow about what it's like to be a woman, but there is an extra
Yeah.
layer of being a black woman because you have to add the race to it. So I think that that's something that I do tend to go back to often. Yeah.
Yes. And thank you for sharing that. And you said that beautifully. It's the one thing that someone else can't speak on your behalf about. And it's and that's so. Thank you for using your voice and also inspiring others. Because if you've been on the fence about standing up for something, might want to look around. You might be one of the only people who can say it. So thank you for exemplifying courage. I want to touch back because you said something that's pretty important to what's going on the left, which is a very large playing field. But you talk about this notion of deconstruction, and because you weren't raised evangelical, and then also we do see a lot of folks that are deconstructing. Have you? Those are different approaches that have the same goals, but as someone who is working and leading executive director of the new evangelicals, how has that been to navigate the two people coming from different angles on this?
It's been interesting, but also rewarding because
Uh,
just as I talked about how like there's, no one can really talk about my experience as a black woman. That's something for me when it comes to deconstruction and your faith journey, it's also very personal and
yes.
individualized. And so being someone who hasn't gone through that, but is able to have those conversations with people and understand where they're coming from, I'm trying to be the example of this is where I want you to end up because this is where I've always been. Not to, and again, I'm not saying that to sound pretentious in any way, but I know that faith has been used as such a way to harm people. And I want people to know that faith
Mm,
doesn't have to be that way or look that way. It should be for healing, it should be for compassion and love, and should be for peace, and to just kind of give you that settled feeling rather than anxiety, which I know is what it's caused for a lot of people. So I think the deconstruction journey has been really rewarding to witness because it's given me a different perspective. And it also changes how I approach things as the executive director of the organization, where most people in part of it and the community side of it are going through that.
mm,
And so I really do show up with care and with integrity and humility and understanding, but also trying to guide people out of it so
mhm,
that they don't have to feel stuck in this place anymore. Um, I actually had this conversation with someone who admitted that their response to me about something was stemmed from their experience of deconstruction and harm in the church, and they were projecting that onto me. And instead of me responding back, because some people would respond back with an
mm,
attitude, you respond back with like, "Hey, I get that, but next time maybe assume positive intent, or
mm,
assume this." Rather than be looking to be defensive because I'm not your enemy, right?
right.
And it gave them something to think about because I think, unfortunately, there are a lot of church, that set you up in a way to think that everyone is your enemy, to think that everyone's out to get you, and that, your only safe space is within the church. And if you find Jesus, or, I mean, there's all these things that I heard people hear, and I'm like, oh my God, I never heard that
Right,
growing up.
right.
Like,
Yeah,
no wonder, right? No wonder people feel the way that they do. So I'm happy to be in this position because I really do want to model an example of what a healing, compassionate, and loving faith can where you can land with that.
thank you. You said something about, the safe space being their only church community. And I think about how church communities, particularly ones that claim that they're progressive, right? And maybe they go through open and affirming, maybe they go through different forms of instruction to learn how to evolve because just saying I'm welcoming can be very messy very quickly. Yeah, that is something I think I thought about too, and not enough for progressive churches just to claim their openness, but to actively show representation of that. And I say that because growing up, we had a male pastor, but we also had a female pastor, and she preached from the pulpit. We had a black choir director. We had a queer youth minister. There was
Right.
never a question that God like, that this people were like, that there was any sort of discrimination with God, like, I saw it, like, I was like, "What do you" and, um, and I remember distinctly, like, clashing and not realizing that other people just, like, as a middle schooler, like, just not realizing that, "Oh my gosh, there is a whole other way that Jesus looks unrecognizable to me, and that is being, like, communicated to these other people," um and so I'm really thankful when I see folks that are, like you, like, "Okay, let's get back to just the basics. We're not gonna go too deep into any sort of theology or doctrine. Let's just, like, stem it and let's just be back in the position of love and community
Yeah.
justice."
Yeah. It's simpler than people think it is. It really is.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I had someone today, yeah, well, we can go down I can talk about comments online all day, but it's so much simpler um, um, and we just need so much more grace for ourselves and with one another, and the more I watch, this misinformation, it's like there or just the or just the propaganda, the more I'm like, I mean, you truly believe that because that's all you've seen. Like, if you
Sure.
didn't see the news I saw, I know you're a good person. I know you would agree with me on
Yeah.
this, but I can't control your news feed, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
But speaking all about we talked about the new evangelicals. Can you tell, the audience and introduce the new evangelical what are y'all doing? What are y'all up to?
Oh my goodness. What are we up to? We're up to so many things. New Evangelicals is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit, and the entire goal is really to educate people on the effects of Christian nationalism, but also help them
Mm.
find a better path forward in their faith and reclaim Christianity from all of the extremism. And so we do that. We have five different focus areas. We have our media, which is all of our podcasts and Instagram content, TikTok content,
Mm.
and then we have our education where we offer educational courses, we have free resources. We have educational starter packs, different how-to resources that are really great for people at any place in their faith. We have like a community church directory for people that want to find an affirming, anti-racist church, which is great because I know a lot of people still feel ties to their churches, but they've left the bad ones, and so they're like, "Help us find a good one." So we have a little source for them for that. And then we have our community space, which is also on our online platform, T&E Connect, which is where we host all of our courses. And that's kind of like a social media feed. It's like outside of
Mm.
Meta, where people can meet other people in their areas, where we have a regional chat, we have our book club, we have a specific dedicated group for the LGBTQ community, a safe space for them. And then we also
Oh,
have our advocacy. I know I have two more things even.
no, this is awesome.
Great. And then we have our advocacy hub, which it's called T&E Action, and that coincides with one of our shows called Advocacy Hour. And it's a hub where you can go to find petitions, other nonprofit organizations, different stories to amplify within different topics. So we've covered immigration, the unhoused. We're going to be doing reproductive rights and care. We're going to be doing food insecurity. And so if you're like, I really want to do something to give back, you can go to our T&E Action hub and find different petitions, different organizations to volunteer with. It's just a way to put your faith in action. And then the last component of the organization is training. And we just started our very first creator cohort. And so we're training five different faith and advocacy creators on how to use their voice on their platforms and speak from a faith-based perspective about all the things that are happening in the world. And then we also offer in-house trainings for different like school boards, districts, whatever, kind of trying to counter all the stuff that Turning Point is doing, but in a positive way. So teaching inclusive leadership training, how to have conversations with people across political divides. So there's really a breadth of work that we're doing as an organization, trying to show up in a really positive way, and also just change the narrative of what people think when they hear the word Christian, because
Right.
I get that everybody gets visceral and kind of tenses up when they
Mhm.
hear that. We're trying to lead by example and really kind of be the hands and feet of Jesus out in the world.
And you're certainly doing it. I mean, with all the different programmings, and especially I acknowledge and admire your training of content creators because you're training other leaders,
Yes.
and that's really the influence that y'all are gaining. And what I appreciate it is because, like you, progressive Christian, I have seen so many evangelicals, you know, leave the evangelical church and then fly so far the other way. And that's fine if that's what keeps them safe, but is that healing?
Right.
Are they acknowledging the pain that they're carrying, or are they just gonna be angry and distant and, you know? And so what you have offered is a real step and a real community so that people aren't just going the other, and then again, that's their thing, but I can't imagine how many people look to your organization and feel like, "Oh, thank goodness you're here," because, um how many so are y'all primarily just in California? Or
We're
what
well,
does it look
so
like?
Tim Whitaker is the founder of the New Evangelicals, and he's based in Jersey, and so that's where we're
Yeah,
technically registered. But we're a digital nonprofit,
right.
which is a very abnormal model for a nonprofit. So we don't really have like a home base because all of our team members are all over the country. But it's actually kind of I like it because it means we can reach different people for the different things that we need to do. But yeah, so we're all over, and it's been great. And then our like I said, our TNE Connect hub, we have almost 5,000 members now, which is really, really great. And we're trying to grow that to 10,000 by the end of the year. And that's where we host all of our courses and have all of our resources and have our conversation circles and all of that stuff. So it's been great to just build this little community and also reach people that may not even know that we exist. And, there's so many times on social media, I'm like, where people say, like, where are the Christians that are against this administration? And I'm like, we're here. Come on over, see what we got going on. Yeah. Because I understand it's hard to know that we exist because the other ones are so loud.
Yes. Yes, the other ones are so loud. The other ones are so loud, and then there's a lot of folks that just aren't that agree with us on a lot of political things, but don't like
Yeah,
religion, and so you gotta navigate that, and
yeah,
it's just precarious, and, but so critical. I
yeah,
know and I've seen y'all's work. What I appreciate too is that you have a staff and like you said, that you're a proper organization. You have, but how quickly y'all are to respond to news and things coming out in the
yeah,
headlines.
yeah,
And that's really important in a time of chaos when people are looking for leadership, particularly spiritual leadership.
yeah.
Um, when you do all of this with new evangelicals, are you still overseeing the Black Voices Heard?
Yeah, so Black Voices Heard right now is on pause because, unfortunately, last year, my production team, which are a husband and wife team, they lost their house in a fire in one of the LA fires. So we put the project on hold until they're ready to recalibrate, but they're hoping that this year we can start it up again. So right now it is on pause, but I am still overseeing my production company overall. And so I'm working on other like docuseries and different projects, but that one right now specifically is on hold. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But there's still great
Uh,
content for people to see. If you go to Black Voices Heard Project on Instagram, you can still see all the interviews we've done so far.
what are one of the things that you talk about, and we've mentioned this earlier, but I want to dive deeper into it, is this notion of reclaiming Christianity from extremism. Right? We've talked about where are the Christians against this? It's us. Um, talk about tools and steps that you have used. I know that you've talked a lot about community groups for people who are, recovering and leaving evangelicalism, looking for something else. But how can we handle conflict? What are tools that other Christians can do that you can name off for us? I know that you have whole classes and courses. I know,
Yes.
but can you share with us some ways that we can be good progressive Christians.
Sure. So I actually just did a workshop in Washington, at Eastern Washington University, about how to put your faith in action through conversation.
Wow.
And the whole premise of that was to be more of a follower in the conversation rather than a leader. Because I think
Mm,
we typically, and this is just human nature, we want to be heard. We want people to understand our perspectives. We want people to understand our points. And so when we're talking about like political divides and trying to talk with people that have a different version of Christianity, you're like, no, but you're not doing this. You're not doing this. That's what we need to actually not do. How we need to show up is saying, I want to understand where you're coming from. If
mhm.
you lead the conversation, I mean, if you follow in that way by following what they're saying, you're actually leading the conversation,
Yeah.
but in a way that gives them agency over their feelings and lets them understand and have a moment to explain what they're feeling. I think that if you ask questions versus telling people things, you're more likely to get people to agree with what you want them to see rather than telling them, because nobody wants to be spoken to, right? They don't want to be spoken at, they want to be listened to. And so I love being able to sit down with people that I don't agree with and say, okay, you said this, and I want to make sure I'm understanding this. Is this what you're saying? Repeat it to them and then give them the chance to explain, because more often than not, you're going to be able to catch them at a point where they realize, oh, this actually doesn't align with the values that I claim to have, right?
Yeah.
And then you can say, okay, well, if we can agree on this, let's take immigration for example.
Mhm.
Let's say we all can agree that there should be a better pathway to citizenship and immigration. I think in general, most Americans can agree with that, right? There, we have to have a better system. It's the system that's the issue. Do you agree that immigrants should be treated cruelly when they enter? Well, no, no one should be treated cruelly. You're going to get people to say that, right? It's like, okay, well, what should the steps be to make sure that we ensure that no one is treated with cruelty, right? You can lead the conversation that way by trying to understand their process. Well, what would your suggestion be? Well, how would you change that? Well, maybe we could write this together or contact our state representative together about this actionable, step that you can take. It's ways to lead a conversation by following. Do you get what I'm saying?
No,
And
yeah.
so, because you don't want anyone to ever you don't want to ever make anyone feel like you're talking over them, like you're talking down to them, or you're telling them they're stupid, or you're telling them that what they think is not correct. And you never want to tell them to their face that you're not a Christian. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like you're
Right.
talking to a person. But what you can say is, as a Christian, my faith is telling me that I should be showing up for the least of these. As a Christian, my faith is telling me this. What is your faith telling you to do? What is your faith showing you? And you have to have a dialogue like that, or you're never going to get people to see your perspective. And let me tell you, you have to be patient.
Yeah. S
Patience is one of the biggest things that we just don't have anymore, right?
Mhm.
But you have to be patient. And I know there's probably people that are listening and it's like, I've tried that. I've tried that.
No, no.
You haven't tried hard enough. And I promise you, you haven't, because you have to have patience. We are set up in these scenarios for a reason. And I think every day we are given the opportunity to be kinder to one another, to listen to one another, and to change how we approach things. I do think that progressive Christians have a better understanding of how Jesus went through the world. I just do. And I'm not saying that because that's how I understand. You can look at the things that he said to do. He was very clear. Nothing that he said was confusing. It just wasn't, right? But I think some people need to be reminded of that because they have been put into these systems and these communities that have not focused on those words, but they focus on so many other things that at the end of the day don't really matter. And also, people aren't going to remember a Bible verse that you disputed them. They're going to remember how you treated them. They're going to remember how you showed up for them. And so I always say, I'd rather be the good news to somebody rather than just telling them the
Mm.
good news. Because
Ugh,
that's what people wanna know. That's what people wanna feel. They wanna be like, "Oh,
man.
I felt really safe around this person. This person heard me. This person made me feel loved. Not this person was spouting 10 Bible verses to me that make no sense and I don't even know,"
Mm.
you know? I know that was a lot. I just threw a lot. I was just thinking, and this isn't a more constructed course that we do, but those are just some things that that come to mind, and that have been helpful for me, at least in the conversations that I've had.
Well, and what you're touching on too is, you're being a leader by being a listener, you
Hmm.
know. Um Also, when you take that non-militant, non-aggressive, that more welcoming, loving, even if you don't land on the same page in that moment, you have no idea 4 years from now someone's gonna call you and be like, "You were that safe person that I could ask questions to," and that's huge. And I have found that even not just in faith work, but as long as I, like, keep that humanity, I'll get calls not even about faith. I mean, I've gotten calls about a woman that we did not agree on faith, and then she calls me later because 'cause she's got an alcoholic husband, and now things are real, and it's just like, you have no idea that patience, how what that's gonna do.
You
Yeah.
could be planting seeds that grow into something so beautiful later on. Just plant the seeds. You got to plant the seeds and water
Yeah.
it slowly. Water it slowly.
I saw something recently that was, "Unless you are certain, err on the side of mercy," and I was like, "Ooh."
Mhm.
Yeah. Um But, I want to give you, some time. We're just about to wrap up. How can we support you? Where can we send the listeners from today?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways. So my work, I focus a lot on Substack. So you can go to melindahale.substack.com, and I do a lot of writing about race and identity and faith and culture and just how we're moving through the world. But then with the New Evangelicals, you can go to thenewevangelicals.com. You can get involved in our community spaces, take a course, download a free resource, join TNE Connect, make a donation if any of the things that we are doing resonate with you. But those are the two main ways, and please feel free to DM me on Instagram. I respond as often as I can. But there's a lot of great people and great organizations doing good work in the world. So, and TNE does try to highlight other people as well. But you talked about before, like if people are hesitant to say something, you don't need a big platform to make an impact. You don't. And if you feel like you want to say something, but you don't know what that thing is, you can start by saying that. And you
Mm,
will be surprised how many people will agree and say, yeah, I want to say something too. I just don't know what to say. I don't know where to start.
mhm.
Start there. Because the more honest and authentic you are, the more people will listen. And I think that that's something important that everybody needs to remember.
Absolutely. And like you said, activism, every voice counts. And activism is not a one-way method. Like you said, it can be through song, poetry, sports, volunteer. I mean, there are so many different
So many
ways.
things. Yeah.
And so find what it's good for you that resonates with you folks, and get out there because you are entitled to your feelings. You're entitled to seeing a situation and being pulled by that gut feeling. So it's okay. We're giving you permission to act on it. Um, and what that looks like. And of course, TNE is here to support you
Yes.
if you have any further questions or are looking for a community. Melinda, this has been fantastic. You are awesome, and I do hope that you come back. I know that with this administration, there will be lots to cover. So, unfortunately, but it's nice to make allies along the way. So, from
Yes.
Montana to California, hello and thank you. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Absolutely. All right, folks, this is Lee. This is another week of Follow the Leader. I will see y'all next time. Bye bye. How do I record? No, stop recording.